With Parliament deadlocked, people are dividing into camps. But within this tribal atmosphere, we're on the hunt for compromise. Can we find people from rival marches to agree a solution on Brexit?
We're going to London to stop the Brexit betrayal!
We're European and we're going to remain. We're going to remain. We're going to remain.
It was 13 years ago that David Cameron told the Conservatives to stop banging on about Europe. But rather than contain the argument, it has exploded. What once divided a political party now divides the country. There have been 2 marches, one last Saturday, which attracted hundreds of thousands.
What do we want? People's votes! What do we want? Now!
The other began 2 weeks ago in Sunderland en route to London with a very different message.
They think they can walk all over us. Well, we're going to march back to them and...
In the thick of these protests are 2 ordinary individuals from different camps for whom Brexit has hijacked their lives. We're going to get to know them, then bring them together to thrash out a compromise. Let's start with Mandy.
Still going?
Yeah, still going. Thank you very much.
How many days?
Former NHS health trainer from the West Midlands, now semi-retired, who has joined the Leave Means Leave march.
I've come from Sunderland with the guys, and I think it's 270 down to London we're going to do.
In the end?
In the end, yeah. So, yeah,
And how are your feet?
quite sore. I could do with a pedicure. When I went into the voting booth and I put my X on that ballot paper, I actually, not naively, because I've been voting since I was 18, I thought that's it. Loved the Lancaster House speech. I thought we've got it. She's got it. She knows what she's doing. A few weeks later, it's just gone from that. It's gone all the way down.
I'm a daughter of immigrants. We're not racist.
3 of my grandparents are Hungarians. I voted
Thank you.
Aye!
I said to a Daily Mail journalist when she came up to me, she'd been marching with us all day, talking to people. First question I asked her, I says, have you found any? And she says, what? I said, those racists and bigots and those uneducated people that we're supposed to be. She says, no, I haven't. And that's quite the truth. And that's what's been so painful, I think, outside the London bubble. You only have to see their placards, like the other day, about comparing us to Hitler, that we voted, 17 million people voted for Hitler in 1933. That was a placard. And I personally have been trolled, and they've called me the Führer, put a moustache on me. And it's, do you know history? And it's quite painful, actually, and it's quite bizarre. And I think, so I'm far right now, and leaders are far right. And we can't understand. It's heartbreaking, actually, why people think of us that way.
OK, let's go to the other camp. Will Dry actually voted Leave when he was just 18. He now campaigns for a people's vote and wants to remain in the EU.
I went to Oxford to study PPE, which is politics. I paused university, came out to help set up a youth group, Our Future Our Choice, which was a group of young people who are campaigning for a people's vote.
So you've left your studies, you put them on hold to do this?
Yeah.
This is kind of like taken over your life.
Yeah, definitely,
And the weird thing is, if you don't mind me saying
Yeah.
the weird thing is it's taken over your life because you're actually campaigning against the way in which you voted.
Yeah, that is slightly weird when you think about it.
When did you start to think, this isn't necessarily what I thought it was going to be?
If there was one moment, it was that time where David Davis went to negotiate for the first time, and the Europeans had piles of papers and were looking really focused, and he kind of just sat there like a lad with no papers, just smiling at the camera. And I just thought back, obviously that photo didn't really influence me, but I do think looking back, it was kind of symbolic of how the negotiations were to go. I certainly didn't vote, and I hope nobody did in 2016 for a kind of 16% hit to the northeast economy, for huge disruption along our trade routes or chaos along the Northern Irish border, which no deal would create. I mean, Boris Johnson said a week before the referendum that anybody who talked about no deal was insane. Now, he was the kind of lead spokesperson of the Vote Leave campaign. If he's saying that, I don't think you can interpret the referendum result as a mandate for no deal.
To take control of the Houses of Parliament.
But back at the Brexit march in Northampton, that's exactly what they're saying.
Outrageous precedent. Democracy is massively under threat.
We blame politicians for not being able to, come to an agreement, come to a deal. Do you really think if we sat the entire population of the country in the House of Commons, they'd be able to come up with a coherent deal that everybody supports?
Democracy is that, the most number of votes wins. That's how it works. And people were given that vote, and we were told by the government that they would carry out our instructions.
It was a black and white question, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
leave. It wasn't leave subject to the terms and conditions, it was leave.
No,
there's no way about it. That was what was on the ballot paper.
Okay.
That's what people voted for.
So which version of Brexit did people vote for? Was it Michael Gove's or Boris Johnson's? Because they're two leaders of the campaign and they've both taken different stances.
Everybody had lots of reasons for voting Brexit, but the question was remain or leave. What do we want?
Brexit!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do the people vote for?
Brexit!
When do we want it?
Now!
Do you think this kind of thing makes a difference, walking?
I know that people say, I suppose it's like the Remainers march, oh, it doesn't make any difference, But the thing is, those marches in the past did make a difference. With the suffragettes, they did get the vote. And things like this, it's not just about, oh, you won't make a difference. We already have made a difference. I've had people say to me, do you know, I'm so fed up, but at least I feel like I'm doing something. I'm not. It's this sense of powerlessness against a total elite. If our vote doesn't mean anything anymore, what kind of a country are we living in? The people on this march, trust me, they do know that we're a great country. And so do you, really, don't you?
Of course we're a great country.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great, but divided. The scale of people holding the opposite view was demonstrated last Saturday. Hundreds of thousands took to the streets calling for a second referendum. A march on this scale hasn't been seen since the 2003 protest against the Iraq War. And they're just as passionate.
Brexit, as it stands, is the will of people who were lied to. That's not their fault. It's the fault of the people who told the lies.
Do you think that this shows that there is a groundswell towards Remain, or is this just a group of people who voted Remain who didn't like the result?
I think it's going to be a group of people who didn't like the result, but as I said in my sort of little comments on the stage, for me this is about the people whose will is being obeyed and the long list of things they were told that have turned out simply not to be true.
They told us we could leave the EU with all of the benefits and none of the consequences. They lied. What did they do? What did they do? What did they do?
And behind the scenes, helping to organise all of this, is our Leaver turned Remainer, Will Johnny.
Do you think it can make any difference to what happens in there?
I think it absolutely can make a difference. I think that when 1 million people take to the streets because they're so frustrated, and when millions sign petitions, it is absolutely puts enormous pressure on politicians to realise that what they're doing is not heading down the right path. They're not heading down the path that the people want them to head down. And I think this is going to end, as Justin Greening just said, with a referendum, because it can only go back to the people to solve it.
So let's bring our two protagonists together.
So, great to get you both together, but we're not here for a fight. We're here to solve Brexit.
Right, okay.
I'll start with you, Will. Is there any form of Brexit that you can accept?
I think that if the country voted for a Brexit deal in full knowledge of what it precisely entailed, because it was a credible plan that was on the ballot paper and a majority voted for it, I would 100% accept that.
Will saying some kind of ratification of whatever we end up with.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
Well, the ratification for me was the actual vote in the beginning. And all this, we didn't know what we voted for. We actually did, Will. I understand, maybe other people's vote in a few years' time, but not now. We haven't implemented the first one.
Okay, so maybe could you accept that people's vote down the line, perhaps?
I would agree that the most sensible way to do it would be to get rid of the transition period and to negotiate the future agreement during that period, and then put that to the people once we actually know what it is at the end. But that's not the situation we're in.
No, but if we could
if it was, I hope we could rally around that.
Could you rally around that? Say,
No.
let's forget the transition period.
Yeah, I just think, no, I mean, our stance is we do want to compromise, but if and let's face it, let's get this one out the way, if Remain had won, we would not be sitting in a park, we would not be discussing anything about, we can't do this, we can't, it would have been settled.
Because we wouldn't be in a national crisis.
But we're only in a national crisis world because those in Parliament, we've got a Remainer Prime Minister, most of Parliament is Remain, most of the establishment is Remain, and they don't want it, and you can see what they've done, a huge mess.
See how rubbish I am at not starting arguing.
Yeah, you are. You're hopeless. It's hopeless. We were all right before he started.
I've been lapping this up.
But the area where I think we disagree on the kind of democratic side of the argument is that I don't think that 17.4 million people voted for no deal. If you look at everything that Leave said, Leave.eu said, the two main campaign groups, they were both arguing that we're going to leave with a deal, not just a deal, but a deal better than the one we've currently got. And given that hasn't been negotiated, I think it's a democratic right to be able to compare all the options.
But there were too many people in Parliament who didn't want that, Will. They didn't want Brexit, and they were going to try any way they could to stop Brexit, and that's what people have seen.
Would you accept that there's been quite a large number of people in Parliament who've seen this as a damage limitation exercise?
Yes. Absolutely. I think Theresa May has.
Yes.
I think Theresa May.
So you kind of agree with that point?
Yeah, absolutely.
And therefore you possibly have greater respect for just the straight out argument than any other?
Yeah, I maybe do in an odd way, because I think that those people at least think that what they're arguing for will benefit the country. Theresa May knows that what she's arguing for won't benefit the country.
And that was pretty much the only thing they agreed on. Theresa May's deal isn't the answer.
We haven't quite found a compromise, have we, if we're honest?
No, we haven't.
We haven't?
No.
But we tried.
But we tried. We tried.
So here we are. The pro-Brexit march finally reached Parliament Square, swelling to several thousand in number.
Bring out your names!
The debate is more polarised than ever. If there was a middle ground, it's currently lost somewhere in a sea of protest. Jason Farrell, Sky News.